The Rapier is amazing at outmaneuvering your opponent and then following up with quick attacks. If you're new here, I'm the Core Gameplay, and in this Furycraft video, I'll be going over a Rapier build that focuses on mobility and burst damage to outplay your opponent. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the Rapier skill tree, weapon and gear perks, gems and attributes. The Rapier skill tree is a little bit different than other skill trees. As you have noticed, the Rapier doesn't really have a lot of passives, but instead have a lot of ability passives below each skill tree. So let's dive into the skills. For my skills, I chose Riposte. It's really good for countering other builds. For example, you can use Riposte to evade any skill and then counter by stunning your opponent so that you can do a heavy attack and then follow up with evade. Evade will be your main damage ability. Each time you do evade, you will basically proc your ultimate, where your next light attack does more damage, and evade actually has a passive inside of his skill tree where you will increase your damage as well after your next basic attack, light attack. So basically you can evade and proc 2 passives at once, giving you a nice burst of damage. So evade will mostly be used for doing damage and not evading skills, which is kinda a bit counterintuitive, but you basically want to spam evade as much as possible. So you're going to go with Riposte to counter other builds, for example their CC, and you're going to use evade for your damage. And then for your mobility, you're going to use Flash. Flash is pretty good for mobility, especially if you go through your opponent, but just be careful, this can be stopped as well. But we took all of the passives for the evade. Now you get swiftness if you crit, some cooldown reduction which is really nice for evade, and then you get some extra damage when your stamina isn't full with the desperation perk. And for these two perks I chose on guard. Basically you get more damage when your opponent's health is above 50%, and then I just chose some cooldown reduction so that I can basically spam evade a bit more. And that's the skill tree. Pretty simple, nothing really too complicated since we only get a couple of passives that's standalone. Next, let's take a look at our gear perks. For our gear perks, I made a little infographic so that we can see all the perks that's on the Rapier, the armor, the amulet, the earrings and the ring. First, let's take a look at the Rapier. These are all recommended perks that I would like on this build, but you can choose your own. So the first perk I want is Keen, the second Vicious, and the last Enchanted. All of these perks will allow me to do more damage with my Rapier, basically increasing my crit damage and crit and auto attack damage. For my armor set, I chose a couple of perks as well. These perks will basically increase my abilities, giving them one extra passive. For my armor perks, I went with Sundering Riposte, Omnidirectional Evade, Refreshing Flash. For the amulet, I went with Divine, Health and Fortify Recovery. This will basically just increase your defense. Really nice. Next, let's move on to the earring. The earring is mainly your potions. It will buff your potions. For the earring, I went Refreshing Toast, Purifying Toast, and Regenerating. And finally, let's go to the ring. The ring will increase your damage. So because the Rapier does thrust damage, I went with thrust damage, Keen Awareness, which will buff your critical hit damage, and then I chose an Arcana damage perk. You can swap this out for fire or anything you like. Let's say you run Fire Staff, you probably want to swap this out for fire damage, but I chose Arcana damage since I will probably roll with an Int build and then have the Rapier as my secondary, so this will also boost your damage quite nicely. Next, let's take a look at our weapon gems. For your weapon gems, you can run a couple of things. You can run an Emerald, which will allow you to execute your opponent a little bit faster when they're under 30% health. This will synergize really nicely with your On Guard passive, since that passive will allow you to do extra damage when your opponent is above 50% health, and this emerald will just allow you to do more damage to your opponent when they're below 30% health. So you cover basically both bases of health, allowing you to do more damage. If you're going to run an intelligent build, you can basically put a gem into your slot. So the gem that I would run for an intelligent build to convert my intelligence into some damage is the sapphire, since it will convert your damage into arcane damage. Arcane isn't countered by anything at the moment, so it's really good for your build, and it's really strong against corrupted. So the sapphire is probably the one I would run since it doesn't get countered. Moving on to our armor pieces and jewelry pieces, we get 8 slots that's available to us, and here I want to balance out my build so that I have resistance against physical damage and elemental damage. To balance this out, I will go 4 malachite gems, and then I'll also include 4 diamond gems. This will give you a balanced resistance against physical damage and elemental damage. For your attribute points, you mostly want to invest in dexterity and constitution. The rapier mainly scales from dexterity, and then it scales from intelligence, but constitution is also important. I'll probably go 250 dexterity, 150 constitution, and then the rest I'll put into intelligence, because you get diminishing returns once you invest enough points into dexterity. And you also get a couple of really good perks when you try to max out dexterity. For example, you get extra crit, extra thrust damage, your dodge will cost a little bit less, you get bonus backstab and headshot damage, and you get bonus critical hit damage when you stun an opponent, which is great for your riposte ability. For your constitution, you also get a couple of really nice perks. For example, you take 10% less critical hit damage, which is really nice. So that has been the perks. For your secondary weapon, you can probably choose a weapon that scales from dexterity, or you can go the route where you take your main weapon as an intelligence weapon, then put a gem into your rapier, and then scale that way. For example, a dexterity weapon I'll probably play with is the musket or the bow, and for intelligence I'll probably go fire staff. For me, I'll probably go rapier musket just because my ping is usually quite high since I play from South Africa on a EU server, so my ping is usually quite high, so hit scan is probably a lot better for me than the bow, but I do believe that the bow is a lot stronger. If you enjoyed this video so far, let me know in the comments what I can improve and what you think about this rapier build. It's mainly focused on 1v1 fights, but if you have any feedback, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, and don't forget I also have a lot of other builds that I went into where I list all of the perks and gear that you can use, so you can go check them out, and I'll see you in my next video.